Good evening. My name is Mark Nozell. I'm the Merrimack Village District Moderator. And let's start our meeting. First off, let's rise, if you will, and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. Thank you. So, I'd like to call the meeting to order now. Registered voters should have two pieces of paper, the official ballot, where you'll be voting later. There's two items to vote on the secret ballot. And then we also have a blue card, which we'll be using for the voting process for the various warrant articles. If you don't have one, please go check in and get a copy. After this introduction, let me go through some of the rules. I'll ask the chairman of the board, Don Provencher, to introduce the rest of the head table. And then we will go and open the ballot boxes, right, for the secret ballots if you want to start voting already. The ballot box is also in the back there. For each of the articles, I will read it and then look for someone to make a motion and a second, and then we can have discussion on the article. If there's no discussion, then I'll immediately call a vote. And we'll be voting with the blue cards. If you do want to discuss the article, please come up to the microphone, raise your blue card, and then state your name. Then we'll have a discussion, comment, and if you want to make an amendment, that would be the appropriate time. Please address all comments to me, the moderator, and then someone on the board will answer your question. If you have an amendment that is long, I'll need to have that in writing. I have some paper. And then you can read it to the microphone. We'll need a second for your motion, and then they will also need to state their name for the record. If there's no second motion, the amendment does not proceed. When comments are over for each of the amendment, then we'll take the vote. I'll say all in favor, you'll raise your cards. I'll say all opposed, and then you'll raise your card if you're opposed. If it appears close, I may ask you to do it again so I can count them. Are there any questions on how the voting will happen? Hearing none. The ballot boxes will be open for 15 minutes after we're done with Article 7, which is the last. It's a little bit different than previous years, but we have no absentee ballots, so we don't have to have some time to do that. So again, it'll be open for 15 minutes after we complete Article 7. At that point, I'll close the ballot box and start the counting. After the count has been double checked, then I'll announce the results, and then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So some quick reminders for the meeting tonight. Please be polite and quiet while others are speaking. Be respectful that other people may have different views than your own and different opinions. Some clarification. I think I misspoke. The ballots will be opening soon and will stay open through the rest of the meeting until the end of Article 7. At the end of Article 7, another 15 minutes, the ballots will continue to be open, and at that point, it'll be closed. Thank you. Please keep your comments to the topic at hand, not about people involved, personalities. Please keep it to the topic. Only speak when you're recognized, and also please put your phones on vibrate so we're not disturbed. At this point, I am opening up the balloting, so if you would like to go vote, you may do so now. The time is 7:08. And that ends the comments. I would like to recognize Don Provencher, Chairman of the Merrimack Village District.
Thanks, Mark. So for introductions, I want to start with our esteemed moderator, Mark Nozell. To my far right, we have Commissioner John Lyons. To my immediate right, Ken Ayers. To my left, Ron Miner, the superintendent. And to his left is Michelle Houghton, the Human Resources and Finance Director.
Okay. So we will now go through the various articles here. I will read them. There'll be an explanation from the folks on the board, and then we can move into any comments or amendments. So, Article 1. Article 1 and Article 2 are for elections of the commissioners. There's one seat open. That's for a 3-year term. That's the first one on the ballot. And the second one is for the district moderator, which is this role, and that's for a 2-year term. Now we're moving on to Article 3. Now we'll have the discussions. Article 3, to see if the Merrimack Village District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,811,846 for general municipal operations for the 2022 through 23 fiscal year, with said amount to come from water-related charges. This article does not include the appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately. A majority vote is required. It was recommended by the Board of Commissioners 4-0-0, and it was reviewed by the Department of Revenue Administration. Comment, this is the operating budget warrant article. Article funds the operations of the district for the year began January 1, 22 through January 30, 2023 for all departments.
Just correct that, that's June, not January.
I'm sorry, I misspoke, June. John, any elaboration on that, or?
No, I thought that's what I was supposed to read, but okay.
Oh, apologies.
But excellent job.
There you go. At this point, are there any comments from the audience? If so, please move up to the microphone.
Hi. Paul McCallie, 17 Mallon Road. Question of order. Who moved it and who seconded it?
Thank you. So I am looking for a move and a second. Anyone want to? So moved by Ken Ayers. And do I have a second?
Didn't we do this one?
I'll second it.
No, we didn't do this part yet. Anyway, thank you, Don, for the second. Are there any additional comments? Amendments?
Tom Koenig, 1 Danforth Road. Is somebody going to give us a brief explanation beyond the notes that you read, or what it was last year, what it is this year, where are we spending our monies, et cetera, just a brief overview at least, please?
I don't think anybody had anything written prepared, but
But you could talk about what you
if you want a
discussed in
million
building it.
mile view, basically what we're seeing is.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can, thank you.
Okay. So, I mean, what we've seen is an increase in demand over the past year. I think we've seen expansion of the town, and even with COVID, so there's been some anticipated rises in the revenues. We've seen significant expense to get rid of the PFAS in the water, and I think those are the two largest trends that we've seen. I don't know if Michelle has anything else to offer.
No, those have definitely been the main things that we've seen over this last year, obviously with working on ultimately having 3 PFAS water treatment facilities up, hopefully by the end of this year, to treat all of our water, has been quite an undertaking. We have done well with our funding sources from the original plan. We are still working with DES, but we've been able to get much more favorable rates, additional grant monies, and we're still exploring some funding programs that are becoming available due to the federal funds that have been coming to the area. So as I said, the demand has actually, we did have some periods where the demand was off when there was quite uncertainty in closings and transitions for folks. But as soon as things started to settle down somewhat, we really did see things come back in all areas and come back even stronger once things started to get back to our new normal.
I guess I'm going to be a pest.
Sure, no, that's fine.
There's always been talk in the past, and I've missed the last meeting or two, and I apologize for that, that we keep adding on apartment complexes and industry and stuff like that and saying we have plenty of water, and yet every year we have this odd even water restriction. Is there anything in the budget to try to improve or move on from that, or can you explain what our status is? Are we expecting odd even watering restrictions again, or even level 3 or whatever like we had last year?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that. I know the odd even restriction is something that's standard now, so that's not an emergency action. That's something that's basically standard. It has to do with we are required by the DES to have a conservation plan, and that's part of the way that we address the conservation plan for DES is to go through the odd even irrigation period. So as you know, on those odd or even days, whichever applies to you under normal situations, you are free to irrigate all day on those odd or even days. So if we get into drought situations, that's when we start restricting the time that you can irrigate during those odd or even days. And you may recall a couple of years ago, we did have to do an irrigation restriction where we limited it to 5 to 8 p.m. and 5 to 8 a.m. If it goes into additional restrictions, we will eliminate the 5 to 8 p.m. and just have the 5 to 8 a.m. Restriction. We are looking into additional source development. We commissioned a study by Underwood engineers to look at, I think they evaluated about 9 or 10 source alternatives, which range from new well sites to artificial recharge to a wholesale agreement to purchase water from Manchester and a wholesale agreement to purchase water from Nashua-Pennachuck. So we're looking at refining those numbers and moving forward with making a determination of which option makes the most sense. So we had them normalize that information in terms of the cost per gallon per day of withdrawal capacity that we would add to the system. So there are some that are very high in cost per gallon per day, and they rank them basically. But some of them result in larger withdrawals because these are all normalized per gallon per day. So you really need to look at not only the cost per gallon per day, but also how many gallons per day of withdrawal that you're going to be getting. Some of the increases, some of the options evaluated only provided for several 100,000 gallons a day, which is not a considerable amount of volume in the summertime. So we still need to make those decisions, but we are moving forward to evaluating what's the best option. We didn't want to jump the gun prematurely and just knee-jerk reaction and throw money at something that we think might make sense. I think it's important to evaluate what the best option really is and do a thorough cost analysis to really know what the gallons per day and the cost per those gallons per day is. So hopefully that sort of answered your question on the amount of water that's available. But we are being told by our consultant Underwood that these apartments that are coming to us looking for more water, that we have the capacity for them. You may recall there were reasons, extenuating circumstances for the need for the irrigation bans in the years past. Most recently, we have an interconnection with Pennachuck that we can open up and get up to 1 million gallons per day from. We opened up that connection 2 years ago, and the problem was that Pennachuck had a restriction in their system, a mechanical failure, and they didn't allow us to take that additional 1 million gallons. So our only other alternative was that we had to stop irrigation. So that was part of the issue with that. So, but we are being advised that we do have enough water for these apartments. We are looking at putting limits on the amount of water that these apartments in these new construction can use, such that we're making them assess the irrigation, and we're going to put limitations on the amount of irrigation. But a lot of these apartments are actually don't irrigate significant amounts.
Right.
And we did a master plan originally a couple years ago, and it did identify that we are going to be looking for 500,000 gallons a day of additional water probably in the next few years. So we do want to start making avenues that we can go ahead and get the additional source for that. So that's the stuff that's under progress, that we're looking for additional source capacity based on those items I discussed.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
Sure.
it.
Any further questions, comments, or amendments? Hearing none, let's move on to the vote. All those that are in favor of the Article 3, I'm sorry, please raise your blue card. Thank you. You can put them down. All those that are opposed? Thank you. The motion-
Mark, just a point of order, getting back to Mr. McCally's question. I don't know, do we need to move in second? Because I think these articles had already been voted on by the board previously. Is this something that we do at this meeting? I don't remember. Because we did vote on these 4-0-0 in the past.
In order to move the article to the floor, it's a
Oh, so,
meeting.
okay.
It's not necessarily you guys. The meeting has to motion a second. To move it to the floor for discussion.
Okay.
For folks that may not have heard it, what the lawyer said was, because we're in a meeting situation, yes, there needs to be someone to make the motion and to have a second. It doesn't matter that you've already had a discussion.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So just to recap, Article 3 passes. Great. Moving on to Article 4. Shall the Merrimack Village District vote to establish a contingency fund pursuant with RSA 52:4-A by raising and appropriating the amount of $20,000 to meet the cost of unanticipated expenses that may arise during the fiscal year 2022 through 23, with said funds to come from water-related charges. Majority vote is required. This is recommended by the Board of Commissioners, 4-0-0, and it was reviewed by the Department of Revenue Administration. John, do you want to read what the RSA says?
Yes. So,
Move it first. You need to move the article for the discussion.
Okay. I would like is there a motion on the floor to bring this forward? Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Don seconds. Now we can have a discussion from the
Great.
commissioners.
RSA 52:4-A states, every village district annually by an article in the warrant may establish a contingency fund to meet the cost of unanticipated expenses that may arise during the year. Such fund shall not exceed 1% of the amount appropriated exclusive of capital expenditures and amortization of debt by such village district during the preceding year. A detailed report of all expenditures from the contingency fund shall be made annually by the commissioners and published with the report.
Okay, thank you. I open it up the floor for any comments, questions, or amendments to this article.
Tom Koenig, 1 Danforth Road. I guess I, again, apologize for missing the last couple meetings. Is this a new program that's being established, or is this something that we've had and we're annually putting money into?
I believe this is a recurring warrant article every year. It's,
So you establish the contingency fund each year, it gets spent that year, and you have to reestablish it the next year, so there's no
don't-
carryover of funds?
I don't know that it gets spent every year.
You've never spent it, so it goes back into the over, I don't know what happens with the money at the end of the year.
It actually lapses.
It lapses.
We've never spent it. If we do, we have to provide a detailed accounting of it in the annual report, and otherwise it will lapse.
Okay, so, but this has raised 100,000, I'm sorry,
No, 20,000.
20,000 in addition to the budget that we just passed. So it's more money being raised from the
Yes,
rates.
there's an RSA that does permit us to have this additional amount
Yep.
calculated on the prior year numbers.
Okay, the part
There's
I
a
wanted
limit
to
that-
understand, you just cleared up, that it
Yes.
does lapse at the end of the year and we have to reestablish it each year.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Juanita Dangle, 17 Westminster Lane. If this money, it has to be reestablished every year, where does the money go? Does it go into a general fund? And if so, how much do we have in it now?
Our general fund, at the end of the fiscal year, I believe we're at 1.2, about $1.2 million at the end of fiscal year 21. The $20,000 goes back into our general fund, but if it's basically for unforeseen expenses that may arise during the budget year, we do allow for such in our budget, but there is an RSA that allows us to have this additional funds there if we do need it. And as we've said, we've never spent it. It returns to our unassigned fund balance. And if we do ever use it, a detailed report has to be provided. It would be provided at the end of the fiscal year, but also included in the annual report that would be distributed.
Okay, and how much did you say we had in that fund right now? That unused fund?
At the end of we just had the audited fiscal year for FY21, and we were at about $1.2 million.
Okay,
We're
thank
still in
you.
that general range.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other comments, questions, or amendments? Hearing none, let's move on to the voting on Article 4. All those that are in favor, please raise your blue card. Thank you. You can put them down. All those that are opposed, thank you. Put it down. The motion passes. Moving on to Article 5. Shall the Merrimack Village District vote to raise and appropriate the fund a sum of $100,000 to add to the district's non-capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1-C for the purpose of emergency water and/or the operations and maintenance of GAC treatment facilities. The sum to come from unassigned fund balance. Majority vote is required. It's recommended by the Board of Commissioners 400, and it was reviewed by the Department of Revenue Administration. Can I have a motion to bring this?
So moved.
Ken, thank you. And a second? A second? Thank you, John. At this point, would the board like to speak to this?
Purpose of this article is to use a portion of the unassigned fund balance to be set aside for future use in the district's non-capital reserve fund. Should the need for emergency water and/or unanticipated operations and maintenance of the granulated activated carbon treatment facility arise, the Board of Commissioners would have these funds available for such purposes.
Thank you. At this point, I invite anyone to come up for comments, questions, or amendments.
Tom Koenig, 1 Danforth Road. How much is in the unreserved the non-capital reserve fund at this point?
$100,600. $100,000 and 600, yes.
And you're asking to put another 100,000 in it at
Yes.
this point? So I'm presuming you're spending money out of this throughout the year, or?
We have not to this point. We had just established the fund in the last, was it last year or the year before? Last year. And we put an initial $100,000 into the fund. So we're just taking from our unassigned fund balance and putting in an additional 100.
So this is taking the money out of the 1.2 million unassigned fund balance you just talked about?
Yes.
And putting it in this fund, and so that this fund can carry over year to year. Do you have a number that you're maintaining or trying to maintain in your unassigned fund balance year to year?
Actually, our fund balance policy is something that we have drafted and under discussion for right now to establish. We've been looking at some information from the industry. We're unique. We're a standalone waterworks. So what the Department of Revenue Administration and New Hampshire government finance offices, organizations, they have general references for total municipalities and what they should hold.
Yeah.
The industry is quite varied. So we've been doing some research on that this last year or so, and also talking with our consultants, Underwood Engineers, and we have discussions underway to establish what we want our fund balance to be maintained at, and if we fall below that, our plan to come back to it, as well as balancing that with what we have set as a goal contribution to our capital reserves.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional comments, questions, or amendments? Seeing none, let's move on to the voting. So we're voting on Article 5. All those that are in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. All those that are opposed, please raise your cards. Again, thank you. The motion passes. Moving on to Article 6. Shall the Merrimack Village District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $236,923 under the provisions of RSA 35:1, Sections 1 and 2, to add to the district's, quote, System Development Capital Reserve Fund for the future system expansion and improvement of the existing systems. This sum is to come from the fiscal year 2020 through 2021 unassigned fund balance. These are the system development charges collected during the 2020 through 2021 budget year. A majority vote is required. This has been recommended by the Board of Commissioners 4-0-0 and was reviewed by the Department of Revenue Administration. Do I have a motion to bring this to the floor? Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
I'll second.
And Don to second. Great. Would you like to speak to it, please?
The MVB Board of Commissioners adopted a system development charge on August 19, 2008. This charge is applied to new customers and those existing customers who increase their water service demand beyond 20% of their current or prior use. The charge can best be described as a buy-in fee to achieve an equal equity position with the existing customers. This one-time payment will cover the share of the value of the existing infrastructure. Fire service interests are not subject to the SDC board, system development charge. The system development charge uses funds policy 08-02-B, was approved by the Board of Commissioners on October 27th of 2008.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to invite people to come up for comments, questions, or amendments. Seeing none, let's move on to the voting. All those that are in favor of this, please raise their blue cards. Thank you. You can put them down. All those opposed, please raise. Thank you. The motion has passed. Moving on to Article 7. Shall the Merrimack Village District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $200,000 under provisions of RSA 35:1, sections 1 and 2, to add to the district's, quote, equipment and facilities capital reserve fund for the associated costs with existing storage, transmission, and production of water. This sum is to come from the unassigned balanced fund, and a majority vote is required. It was recommended by the Board of Commissioners 4-0-0, and it was reviewed by the Department of Revenue Administration. Is there anyone who would like to bring this to the table?
I'll move the motion.
Thank you, Don.
Seconded.
Thank you, Ken. At this point, I'd like to open up the floor to any comments, questions, or amendments on this article.
I can read a description that might
I
help.
apologize.
The purpose of this article is to use a portion of the revenue surplus to be set aside for future use in the district's equipment and facilities capital reserve fund. Should an emergency arise in future years for which there was no appropriation, or should there be the need for an unforeseen special piece of machinery in a pump station, for example, the Board of Commissioners would have these funds available for such purposes. This fund was established by the March 26, 1996 annual meeting.
I would like to open up it again if there are questions and comments or amendments to be made.
Since I'm closest, I'll ask, what's the balance on the fund nowadays?
$2.9 million.
And have we been using it at all for emergency services, things that we haven't anticipated, didn't have an appropriation for, or has it just been accumulating?
For equipment and facilities, we have used it at times. We did replace our John Deere backhoe a couple of years back. It was a late 1990s model, so that was one of the more recent items. We are looking in the coming future, more recent future, to look at replacing one of our dump trucks.
So you're using this as a capital reserve fund for equipment maintenance, although it talks about emergency arises in the future or special machinery needed.
So we also use it to offset. We've also used it to offset grants, so matching grants for the PFAS filtration. We've used some of the funds for that as well.
That sounds like an emergency, given the situation we've been in the last several years. I'm just curious how this was established. If it's for an emergency, is it set up so that the MVD is allowed to draw from that at any time during the year, or do they need to bring it forward to the voters on an annual basis?
The commissioners are agents to expend.
Agents to expand. Okay, and you're at 2-point-something million right now?
2.9.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any additional comments, questions, or amendments on Article 7? Seeing none, let's move on to the voting phase. Again, all those in favor, please raise your blue cards. Thank you. And all those that are opposed, please raise their cards. Thank you. The motion passes. Great. So this brings us to the end of all the articles we just voted on. Just to remind folks, the ballot is still open and shall be for another at least 15 more minutes, at which time we'll start the counting of the ballots. So I encourage everyone to go over and do a vote. And after I announce the results, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you very much. Go vote. Before I read the results, I just wanted to have a reminder out there that the town election will be April 12th, and the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and we encourage everyone to go vote. So we just did the tally of the vote. We had 0 absentee ballots, and we had a total of 22 in-person ballots right here. And the results are for Article 1, which is a commissioner 3-year term. Ken Ayers was the nomination, and he got 22 votes. Congratulations. Article 2 is for the moderator position. The only candidate was myself, Mark Nozell, and I got 21 votes, and there was 1 write-in vote as well. So I won the election. There we go. So at this point, we've conducted all the business. We had the results from the voting. And at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, and thank you. At this point, I would like to have a vote. Are people ready to adjourn? Please raise their blue cards. Yes, thank you. All those opposed? Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you.